as we talk about March Madness, as we talk about, the wonderful thing that is March Madness in college basketball, this is something that happens every year. You start to see takes float out there that imply, hey, because March Madness is so great and that tournament field is so large, that means that college football and the expanded playoff is overall a good thing. Now, the man producing the show, Trey Anthony, and I, we talk about this legitimately probably multiple times a week. So this is something that we, even in this very room, there may not be 100% alignment on. But with that being said, the take is going to be, hey, you see how great March Madness is? That's why the college football playoff should expand to more teams. Now, I wholeheartedly disagree with this. So I'll tell you why. First, they are completely different sports. Everything that I'm going to talk about right now can be built on the foundation of basketball and football at the collegiate ranks, two very, very different things. Why do we love March Madness? Why do we love March Madness? Because in tournament mode, it's all on the line. It's one game. It's all or nothing. And it's win or go home, right? And there's that, and you pair the upset side with it as well, which we'll get to in a second here. But what people love about college basketball is the tournament, right? I mean, that's what makes college basketball so epic, is the fact that when you get to March, you fill out your bracket, and Fairleigh Dickinson may go on a run. You may have St. Peter's go on a run. Like the tournament is what draws all the eyeballs. The tournament is what has the cult following, right, when it comes to college basketball. Now, don't get it twisted. There are folks that are dialed in back in the wintertime to their team and their non-conference play, and you see the Mal Invitational. Like that's awesome. We appreciate and respect those people. But again, what we love about college basketball, in large part, can be distilled down to the tournament, distilled down to the postseason. Now, what do we love about college football? The regular season, right? Like the postseason is a pretty new thing in college football. Bowls used to mean a whole heck of a lot more than they do right now from the outside looking in. The playoff is a pretty new idea when it comes to what college football is. It used to be play the regular season. From the regular season, you get your conference championship games. From your conference championship games, you get into the BCS and you play what happens there. Again, the regular season is what has had the cult following that college football has generated, right? Not the postseason. So that's the first part. What's made college football epic is the regular season. Trey Anthony and I, we got to go on the road and go see Florida State and Clemson play in week 4. That was a playoff game. For Clemson, that was a playoff game. If they lost that one, they were effectively out of the college football playoff race, and they were. That happened in September. Happened in week 4. We didn't have to wait till the postseason. We didn't have to wait till Selection Sunday. That game meant everything to Clemson, and I have to believe it meant everything to Florida State at that point in time as well. So what's good for college football is not necessarily good for what's is good for other sports, okay? And what I want to say here, as we move to 14 teams, which if you're already subscribed to the channel, you know our thoughts on this. We talked about it as soon as that news broke. When we move to 14 teams, we are nurturing the playoff of college football. That's what we're feeding. That's what we're placing an emphasis on. What you nurture is what grows. Now, to be clear, there's only so much nourishment to go around. So as you nurture one thing, I think it's difficult to then nurture the regular season as well. The regular season is what has drawn college football fans to college football. The other part of this, which I touched on a little bit, you're getting a lot of folks that say, okay, you don't want the playoff expanded. You don't like the Cinderella stories. You don't like seeing that 15 seed make a run to the Final Four or to the Elite Eight or whatever. You don't like seeing that team that we all just learned about, I don't know, a week ago, take national center stage and those kids get to live out their dreams. No, of course we do. Of course, I love March Madness. I think March Madness is phenomenal. But the reality with those Cinderella stories is, as we expand this playoff, we're not widening the margin for these teams to go make a run. We're not going to have the Fairleigh Dickinson of college football make a run to the national championship and have those consistent, stories across college football. For one, expanding the playoff actually makes that less doable. You have to win more games. Previously, Cincinnati, as a G5 team, set themselves up for success over a longer period of time, made a run, made the college football playoff. That was phenomenal. That was a Cinderella story. If Cincinnati had won 2 games, they would have been national champions. Fast forward the tape now, if Cincinnati makes the college football playoff, and they're a power conference school, so this example doesn't really stand that test. If a G5 school makes the college football playoff, when they make the college football playoff and expanded capacity, what's going to happen is you have to then win 4 games to win a national championship. Okay, so that Cinderella story, the best chance of that was always the 4-team playoff. Heck, the BCS was maybe a little bit more of a smaller margin there, but there were folks that I wholeheartedly believe would have If Boise State had sustained their success on that run, I think they would have eventually found their way into that national championship conversation. I don't know the national title, but the conversation. So the point being, the 4-team playoff actually always catered more to that Cinderella story. Now with the expanded playoff, the path is much steeper to be able to make that kind of Cinderella run. Then also just the way that these sports are different, I think, has to be talked about when we talk about March Madness versus expanding the college football playoff. Like, I love college basketball, but the reality is that there is some very real equalizers within the sport of college basketball that don't exist in college football. Like, physically, I could be my size, or good 5'11", 6 foot on my driver's license, and just be wet from three that day. And that might be the difference. Me and my squad, I don't know if we got a bunch of other 2-stars on my team, but if I am just unconscious from three-point land on that day, we might just win. Like, that might just be the difference. Doesn't matter if we're playing Duke. Doesn't matter if we're playing Kentucky. I don't have to be tall. I don't have to be fast. I don't have to be quick. I don't need any physical giftings besides this skill of shooting the basketball from 45 feet behind the arc to win the basketball game. In football, I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm saying the physical limitations are much more defined. Like in college football, physical giftings will eventually be the difference. Like, there's no better example than Michigan this past year. If I can move you against your will on the offensive line and the defensive line, we're winning the ball game. We're winning the ball game. Like, it doesn't matter if you have the best quarterback, doesn't matter if you have the best wide receivers. If we win our matchups consistently across the board, we're winning the ball game. And so not only if you're going to make a Cinderella story kind of run in the new expanded playoff, do you have to win more games, you have to do it against more physically advanced teams. And so my point being is, let's say you do win one game as the Cinderella of the college football playoff. Well, then you play the next game against a team which is just as physically gifted, and guess what? You're beat up from that week before. If you got to play Michigan and then Ole Miss, and then you got to play, let's say, Georgia, or you got to play Penn State, like, after a while now, that's going to wear down a team. So the fact these are just totally different sports too, I think needs to be acknowledged when we talk about this college football playoff field expanding and comparing it to March Madness. I love March Madness, but March Madness and college football as a playoff do not necessarily assimilate themselves to be the same kind of product. Last thing I'll say here, and this might split the room a little bit, we're going to talk about it. Notice how college football fans, there's not a whole lot of carryover to other sports with their fanhood. Now, I didn't say there's no carryover. I just said in terms of like the crazed individuals, like the kind that watch this show all year round, you don't necessarily live and die with the San Antonio Spurs and the Miami Heat. You don't live and die with your NFL team. You might watch it, you might enjoy it, but it pales in comparison with your fanhood and your passion to what college football is. And so I think as we expand this playoff, we're thinking a lot about the viewer and the product and all that, and I get it. Like, hey, make your money. Like, that's what this is about at the end of the day. So this is me kind of yelling at the cloud. The money is going to be what drives this whole thing. And there's a lot of money to be made by expanding the playoff. But just understand now, the folks that were always involved and entrenched in what college football is, they're here for what the sport always has been, and not the postseason that you're tinkering with and trying to attract more eyeballs with. College football, the more the merrier for sure, but let's not change the sound of what college football is just to play bigger venues, to use a metaphor from Andy Staples. We all loved college football when they were the band playing the small coffee house, when they were playing acoustic guitar and playing, whatever their early hits were. Now is moved to arenas. That's great. If you want to come be a part of what this concert is that is college football, phenomenal. But I don't want us tweaking the sound too much to attract more eyeballs. That's down a whole other rabbit hole, but I'm just saying, March Madness, we love it. College football, we love it. We don't need to have an expanded playoff that matches March Madness for us to still enjoy college football, for it to still be as good as it always has been. So, again, that may split the room a little bit here. It splits this very room that I'm sitting in right now with the man Trey Yannity sitting right next to me. But it is what it is. I like the college football playoff. Like I like my parties. Small and intimate.